Okay, good morning. Sorry we're a few minutes late. Everybody's getting themselves collected in the new year. We were showing the pictures up here of Director Umberg, who many people know is a reserve officer in the United States Army, was just back from Afghanistan. His wife, who is very active in Veterans Affairs, and he was showing a picture of carrying her across the threshold into a tent for their anniversary. So a guy who knows how to show a woman a good time. You're right, in Kandahar. So let me just start by thanking you for your service, Mr. Umberg. Thank you very much.
And thanks for coming home safe.
Yes. Good morning. The meeting of the California High-Speed Rail Authority will now come to order. Could you please call the roll?
Vice Chair Schenk?
Here.
Vice Chair Richards?
Here.
Mr. Umberg?
Here.
Mr. Hartnett?
Here.
Mr. Rossi?
Here.
Chairman Richard?
Here. And I will ask Mr. Hartnett, the proud father of the newest admittee to the United States Naval Academy, his daughter, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you. We can join together and pledge
Allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And welcome back, Mr. Hartnett. We're very, very pleased that the President of the Senate and the Rules Committee reappointed Mr. Hartnett to the High-Speed Rail Authority. We'll continue to be graced by his presence and hard work. And congratulations on your daughter. That's a phenomenal achievement. All right. We will begin with public comment. And as is our custom, we will start with, let me just go through to make sure that our public officials speak first. And then after that, all of the comments will be taken in order. Okay. Let me just quickly make sure. I'm sorry, I should have done this before. Okay. First off, Fresno County Board of Supervisors, Supervisor Henry Perea.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thank you for allowing me to speak today, and congratulations on your family. And just wanted to share with you, I was, and I don't have a tie, I mean no disrespect, I forgot it. I was at the hospital all night. My youngest son and his girlfriend had a baby, and little Sophia was born at 4:30, so before I left Fresno at 5:30 this morning, I went to visit her. So, yeah, it's a great day for family. And you know, it's why we come here all the time to support you for the great things that you're doing. You know, when I held her this morning before I left, you know, I thought about what our parents and what our grandparents have done for us to build the type of infrastructure and world that we have, which makes us a world-class country that we are. And we're doing the same thing for our kids and grandkids. So just here to share that with you, and thank you for the heavy lifting that you're doing and hard work every day. And just to let you know that in Fresno, it's nice to shift from the debate about high-speed rail to execution. And I can tell you we are on the ground every day. We are working with folks, making sure now that we are making your vision come true. And it's going to start in Madera, Fresno County, and we're going to make it happen. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Congratulations and thank you. And once again, the record will note that I think the person who has a near-perfect attendance record, perfect when you count the excused absence we gave him, is Supervisor Perea. Next is Supervisor Richard Valley from Kings County. Welcome. Congratulations.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Happy New Year. Mr. Chair, I just very simply here before you today to represent the county. One is on the record of being in attendance here today. And as you move forward this year, we do know you have a lot of tough decisions to make, decisions that affect the overall being of Kings County. And so as you make those decisions, please continue to keep in mind remarks that you've heard as you've been there. And again, just want to wish your board well and thank you for your service. And we do look forward to seeing you back in Kings County, hopefully prior to these tough decisions got to be made. Thanks, sir.
Thank you, Supervisor. And let me assure you, we definitely, we know that there are significant impacts that need to be addressed in Kings County. We've appreciated the opportunity to work with you and your colleagues on the Board of Supervisors, and we hope to work through those issues in a positive way this year.
Sure.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, next from Madera County, Matt Trieber. I hope I pronounced your name correctly, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I was here to speak on item 2. I can speak under public comment if you
Actually,
like.
sir, what we tend to do is we have all the public comments for all the items at the outset. So
Certainly not a problem. My name is Matt Trieber. I am here at the direction of our chairman of the Board of Supervisors for Madera. I'd like to start off by thanking you and your staff. We've been working closely with your staff on the east-west alignment alternatives that are going to be discussed under item number 2. We like the dialogue that's occurring there. We would like to call out, however, our concern over what we have seemed to see a lack of disclosure and discussions related to the potential alignment alternatives and the impacts those may or may not have on the siting of the heavy maintenance facility. As you are aware, the county has several sites that have been carried forward. We just would request that you direct your staff to continue to meet with the county and have a more open dialogue and discussion on the siting of that facility and the impacts that the location of these routes may occur on that siting. With that, I'd like to thank you again.
Okay, thank you. I will ask Mr. Morales when that presentation happens. If we are prepared today to talk about that, that's fine. If not, then we'll be clear about time and place when we are. So thank you, Mr. Trieber. Next up, Leanne Eager, followed by Diana Lacombe.
Good morning, Chairman Richard, Board, Mr. Morales. I'm Leanne Eager, President and CEO of the Economic Development Corporation serving Fresno County and a member of Fresno Works. I'm so glad to see all of you here today, especially Mr. Richards up and about. Appreciate it. I just wanted to let you know that in Fresno, we are continuing our work in working with our businesses to get them certified, making sure that if they want to work on this project, that we have enough folks in the Central Valley that can do that. We're also working with our businesses that are along the alignment, keeping them informed, meeting with your staff, with those businesses, making sure that they have place available to go to when it's time for them to move. But I also wanted to make sure you knew that we have been working really closely with the staff there in the Central Valley. And Diana Gomez Martinez is a wonderful addition. We have been meeting on a regular basis, making sure that what they're doing and we're doing is in sync. And I know that the last couple meetings that we've gone to, that the business owners have been very appreciative of those meetings and of the high-speed rail addressing some of their concerns. So we appreciate that. And also Mike Villains and his team. When there's an issue that happens and we need to get the word out, sending that to him and getting the word out for his team and Mr. Wilcox, that has been essential for us in order to make sure that those of us in the Central Valley understand what's going on and are able to do the work going forward. I also met with the folks in Kern County a couple of weeks ago. They would like to get a Kern County Works going in order to, get their businesses prepared, make sure that they're prepared for when it goes down that way. So Fresno Works is going to assist them. We're going to be meeting with the folks in Merced also. So the Central Valley in its entirety will be ready for this project. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Eager. We appreciate those comments. Good morning, Ms. Lacombe, followed by Anja Radebach.
Good morning, Chairman Richard, CEO Morales, and authority board members. Today I'd like to discuss 3 items with you. The first is conflict of interest policy and implementation. The second is the Caltrans interagency agreement with a 30% goal. And lastly is the Amtrak and California partners in pursuit of the trains. First of all, the conflict of interest. APAC requests that the proposed awards not be finalized until there is clarification of this specific conflict of interest being questioned. Bender Rosenthal, Inc. was the primary right-of-way consultant to the authority and has already performed work on 500 parcels in Central California. To our best knowledge, the 500 parcels were sole sourced to Bender Rosenthal, Inc., since a request for proposals was never publicized by the authority. In 2012, the right-of-way contract was unbundled into 4 contracts. The highest combined number scored was Golden State Right-of-Way Team. And if you see the notice of proposed awards that I've given you, they are the ones that scored absolutely the highest. I've also added there for your information the county of Sacramento and the fictitious name statement where Bender Rosenthal actually DBA set up the DBA as Golden State right-of-way team. So I would like for you to look at the right-of-way. I've handed you all the information on that. Approval of the Caltrans interagency agreement for the relocation of Highway 99. We had requested several times in front of this board if the 30% goal was going to be applied, and we were told, yes, that it was. However, in going back and looking at the agreement, it does not state it anywhere. So we would like a response from the authority on that. And then lastly, on the trains, the train sets that are being were on the press release recently, I think this is a great idea. I would recommend that these trains be actually built in California and primarily, if at all possible, in Central California, since it has the highest unemployment rate. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lacombe. Ms. Radebach, if I could ask you to just bear with us for 1 second. Do you want Tom to respond to this now? Or see if he could? Or wait till later? Okay. All right. Thank you, Ms. Lacombe. I was just conferring with Mr. Morales because obviously any question of conflict of interest is something that we take seriously, and I know that he's been in touch with our general counsel, so we will follow up with him on that. Thank you, Ms. Radebach. I apologize for that, and good morning, and you'll be followed by Eric Kristen.
Where do I give you guys things?
Thank you, Angie.
Good morning. My name is Anja Radebach. I am the Executive Director of the Madera County Farm Bureau. I have come here to address Agenda Item 2, the supplemental analysis for the Central Valley Y. I represent approximately 40% of the affected stakeholders in the Chowchilla region. None of them have been informed of this new analysis strategy. None of them have received any stakeholder outreach regarding a supplemental or subsequent EIR, and we find that really appalling. The staff report for Agenda Item 2 indicates the staff is seeking the board's blessing for a new strategy regarding the Y analysis and efforts to comply with CEQA, either a supplemental or a subsequent EIR. They're two very different things, and I'd like to know which one is it. Staff appears to have lumped them together as one and the same, but they are certainly not the same. Additionally, as a new major problem with this plan, is it a supplement or a subsequent EIR to what? The Merced to Fresno EIR? This can't possibly be legal. Since there's a pending legal challenge to that EIR cannot be deemed adequate. And supplementing the Merced to Fresno EIR also can't possibly be the case because it implies that CEQA analysis has already occurred on the Chowchilla Y box. This board directed staff in 2011 not to analyze the Chowchilla Y box. Remember? And now the staff report is suggesting that you're going to analyze it through a supplemental that there was never analysis in the first place. It also can't possibly be legal because CEQA requires in black and white that prior CEQA analysis be performed first, and only then can you have a subsequent. If you don't believe me, I know you guys have some very expensive hired guns that you can consult with. Another thing that the staff report seeks to do, I'm sorry, I've traveled a really long way, so if you could lend me a little bit more time.
Go ahead and finish.
Another thing the staff report seeks to do is expand the Chowchilla White Box into a further, more distant western boundary. This report refers to the area as the Carlucci Road to the west, and I'm operating under the assumption that the board doesn't know where Carlucci Road is. Madeirans and Mercedians collectively refer to this area as the Red Top area. And that area has the highest rate of subsidence in the world, 3 times that which toppled New Orleans after Katrina. So I've provided the board with a Department of Water Resources map that shows that the average rate of subsidence in that area is 18 inches a year. The Merced to Fresno EIR said that subsidence was an insignificant issue. This is a serious issue and one that you should be very concerned about. Finally, I'm asking the board to really take a look at this strategy because it doesn't make sense to us, again, representing many, many stakeholders involved in this process. First, you've asked the staff not to analyze an area that's as large as one of the Hawaiian Islands, and now you promised that area would get the level of analysis that it desperately needs in a subsequent, a brand new EIR, Merced to San Jose, and now you're asking us to just brush our concerns aside while you roll it up into a subsequent or supplemental EIR. This strategy is not acceptable to us. Additionally, these decisions impact a lot of folks in the Central Valley, and we respectfully request that you have many more meetings concerning the initial construction segment, the initial operating segment, and all things related to Construction Package 1 in the Valley. We can't get up here, so we'd really appreciate your consideration on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Rodabow, let me just say that, as I understand it, today's briefing on this will be an informational briefing, so no action will be taken today. We will have a closed session. As you can see from the agenda, one of the items is directly pertinent in terms of the litigation. And so we'll have an opportunity to ask our staff to consider and comment on this. So I wanted you to know that your comments are timely and
I appreciate that. And your staff they're very nice people. And you guys know that the Chowchilla region is full of different opinions, and they have a tough job ahead of them. And I was there with the meeting in 2012 where we tried to resolve some of these issues. They are far from resolved. Thank you.
I understand that, but we're going to keep working towards it. Thank you, Ms. Rodabow, for your comments. Mr. Kristen, good morning. We're sorry you didn't bring your kids. They were really cute.
They're having much more fun today. They're able to join their mom, who's an Air Force pilot out of Beale, and she's commanding a squadron out there. They get to spend the day with her for mom at work days, or kids at work day with mom, so it's much more exciting. Sorry than your meetings.
You mentioned that last time, and let us thank her.
Yeah, the little one was quite active. I apologize again for that.
It was fine.
Mr. Chairman, board members, Happy New Year. Thank you for giving us an opportunity to speak again today. Unfortunately, it is about the issue that we've been talking about for some time, which is the issue of project labor agreements, which have now kind of come out of the box, if you will, and have been unveiled, at least in its draft form. as we feared, and it is the typical PLA. We've dissected it. We'll be unveiling it as part of a website that we're unveiling tomorrow to talk about this issue. A project labor agreement, for those in the audience that aren't aware, impacts. We just had the Bureau of Labor Statistics indicate that the union representation in the construction workforce in California fell to the smallest percentage it's ever been, in the country that it's ever been, 13.2%, almost a full percentage point drop. That's the market at work. It's people choosing where they want to work. Most choose to work in union-free environment. A project labor agreement makes it almost impossible for those non-union workers to work on this project unless they become a member of the union. So we oppose PLAs, and unfortunately we'll have to oppose the project so long as one is on it, and we'll be again unveiling a website tomorrow that deals with that very issue. We will be showing the dissection of the PLA on the website. We will also be showing an unfortunate circumstance that happened with the head of the Fresno, Madera, Kings County trade unions, who was at a debate with myself and others at a group of minority contractors in Fresno a few weeks ago, and in a fit of rage got up and proceeded to swear at me in front of my children and storm out of the room, and it was an ugly scene. But these are the type of people who are negotiating agreements that all of our people have to work under, and it's unfortunate. But I did want to say that the editorial that I ran, of mine that ran in the Sacramento Bee, the fact that we are going to be supporting the litigation against this right now because of this project labor agreement is the result of the PLA being a part of this process. It's unfortunate, it's unneeded, and it has now brought us into this fight. So I wanted to make you aware of that. I thank you for your time. I know you have a lot of tough issues that you're dealing with. People that are happy with this, unhappy, a lot of money at stake, but I do want to continue to give you our perspective as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kristen. We appreciate it. I don't know if this is one that we can bridge, but we try to listen to all these things carefully. I apologize. I'm having Nicole, is it Goering? And if I mispronounced your name, I apologize. I think you appeared before us once before, and I think I apologize for mispronouncing your name at that time, if I recall.
Chairman Richard, I apologize for my horrible handwriting.
I just went to my eye doctor yesterday, so I think I'm good, but it just...
So your eyes are good, but just bad handwriting. Good morning, Chairman Richard, members of the High-Speed Rail Board, and Mr. Morales. Again, I'm Nicole Goering with Associated Builders and Contractors, California. We are, our members are general contractor, subcontractor members who perform commercial, industrial, public works construction, and we also operate state-approved apprenticeship programs in several trades: electrical, plumbing, sheet metal, HVAC, painters, laborers, carpenters, heavy equipment operators, et cetera, et cetera. We are here today to express our concern about the project labor agreement. There's language in the current draft that states that these apprentices that we train will not be able to be used, so they won't be able to receive any of their own on-the-job hours for the work on the train because of the PLA. Just real quick, I was invited to speak on a PLA panel that Mr. Kristen also mentioned a few weeks back in Fresno, and I was thinking that I would see a lot of you there at the meeting, and excuse me if I didn't see you there, but I don't believe I did, so I'm wondering what staff did attend that session as we discussed important elements of language that were of concern in that PLA. But the day before, I was at a Small Business Advisory Council meeting of the CAHSRA, and I was surprised to learn that the PLA, or the CB policy, finally morphed into a project labor agreement that was at the high-speed rail waiting for approval. And so I was surprised to see that. Was this the plot that was all along to do this behind the scenes? Is this to benefit special interests? I thought this project was to benefit all of the citizens of California. The second thing I learned there is that the contract will be awarded to only those primes who demonstrate that they will sign on to this letter of assent, this project labor agreement. Otherwise, they won't be considered, not based on their merit or if they can qualify, other than they need to sign this letter of consent. And finally, the third thing is all the primes who, I also learned, all the primes who submitted bids, those who are not chosen are going to be reimbursed for their work. So this is the first time I've seen a situation like this, where people submitting bids are going to get reimbursed for their time and consideration. ABC California remains opposed to the policy, the PLA
policy in its current format, and we look forward to our meeting with you, Mr. Richards, next week to discuss the changes that we are asking for in that document. I'm sorry, the meeting with Mr. Morales, not Mr. Richard. So we have emailed our letter to you this morning to all of the board members, and we would respectfully request that you include that letter in your minutes of today's meeting. We've spoken before you several times before asking for a fair and open competition policy, and each time it has not been reflected in the minutes. And I would respectfully request that our letter be submitted and included in those minutes. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Ms. Gehring, let me just say two things quickly. And I'm always reluctant to comment on speakers because I never want to chill anybody's ability to come and speak to us, but you represent a sophisticated organization, so I know you're not going to be dissuaded by that. But just clarifications. One, on the reimbursement of contractors, I think that's fairly standard policy, and it's a way to encourage competition among contractors because this is a very big and expensive process to put an RFP together. And so it doesn't, the reimbursement that we offer does not even come close to the costs that these companies incur. I think this is pretty standard practice throughout the industry with very large construction projects like this. So we made the decision that the public would benefit more by having more competitors because it would drive the cost down if we could encourage competitors to come in by taking some of the sting out when they lose. So I wanted it to be clear because it might seem curious to people at first why we would pay losing bidders, but it's very much a mathematical proposition. We think that we'll get better bids and lower bids as a result. And the other thing, too, I just wanted to say, so that when you do have your meeting with Mr. Morales, you and Mr. Kristen can understand that at least my view, I have personal views about project labor agreements because I've worked in situations where they've been used, but there has been no policy from this board that I'm aware of that has required people to enter into project labor agreements. The companies that have come in and chosen to bid have been signatories to these agreements. Now, whether the board would adopt such a policy or not adopt such a policy, but I do think right now on the ground what we're dealing with is that these are companies that have a lot of experience in this marketplace and they've chosen to do this. So, again, I want to distinguish between what the companies choose to do and what the board might adopt as a policy. And I just don't believe we've adopted a policy on that at this point. I just say that to you because you're going to have continuing interactions with us, and I want to make sure that we can find common ground where we can. And so I just offer those thoughts for you for your upcoming meeting with Mr. Morales.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Gehring. Frank Oliveira, and he'll be followed by David Schwagel. Mr. Oliveira, Happy New Year.
Same to you. I hope your holidays were good.
They were, and I appreciated your holiday message. Thank you.
Part of the topic that I've been listening to today, people coming up and talking to you, has been about transparency, due process, doing the right thing, all of those issues. By the way, you don't have a quorum right now. Should I stop?
We have 5.
Do you?
2, 4, 5. Mr. Morales doesn't count for quorum purposes. He counts for every other purpose.
Because Mr. Umberg is missing. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, but they're 5 out of 9, so that's
okay.
That's quorum.
At any rate, all of this said, there's a preponderance of things that are being, or a perception that things are being done behind closed doors for reasons less than honest and respectable. Questions about how things are done in the Chowchilla, why people aren't noticed, and apparently something's happening in the background, and people aren't getting the word, that makes people uneasy. This discussion about PLAs, and nothing official's been done, but the PLA information's out there, it makes people nervous. It makes people feel that things are being done in the background in a shady way. On your agenda, there's an agenda item to recommend, I believe, awarding a construction management contract to Wong Harris. Okay. Isn't their executive staff made up of PB people that came from PB? So aren't they going to be, for $34 million, watching the people that they work with and came from? Doesn't that kind of sound like what happened with the Mercury PR firm a few years ago, which gave genesis. They weren't vetted on conflict of interest, which then gave birth to Ogilvy and that problem. So there's a concern that things are not happening in an honest, transparent, clear way that people can understand. This is something that's troubling. Your staff, your administrative staff, your CEO came from PB. He used to be a PB guy or a Parsons person. Okay, aren't you hiring people within your hierarchy that works for the people that you're supposed to be watching? There was an article about an engineering association, and I don't remember who it was, that recently had an article expressing concern about the plan to have contractors, these contractors that are building this design-build thing, hire their own inspectors, so the people that would be inspecting their work would actually be beholding to them. Doesn't all of this smack as conflict of interest and not getting the best bang for the buck for the public and things that are going to set your project back at the end if they're not clearly vetted out to the public and done in a logical manner that makes sense? If there are reasons why you're all doing this stuff this way, perhaps you need to explain it to the taxpayers of the state of California a little bit more clearly. I want to thank you for the extra time that you gave me. And again, I wish you all a Happy New Year's.
Thank you. We'll be having that presentation on the construction management contract, and I think we'll be able to address some of those questions that Mr. Oliveira raised. David Schwegel, followed by Ted Hart.
Good morning, fellow leaders. My name is David Schwegel, and I wanted to start off first off by expressing my appreciation to the board for a very valuable insight that I personally saw at the Transform meeting, the USHSR Los Angeles conference, as well as the Merced open house. I especially appreciated the comments about why Pacheco was selected over Altamont and the Central Valley University's potential for pioneering high-speed rail curricula. We recently learned that China launched its 1,400-plus mile high-speed rail line, the world's longest, and when we hear news items like that, that gives dreamers like me the potential for dreaming about a transcontinental high-speed rail system here at home. Now, while it's unlikely that we're going to see such a transcontinental high-speed rail system materialize between now and February, I encourage you to take a trip to D.C. next month anyway for the February 11th through 13th high-speed rail conference that will feature Joe Boardman of Amtrak as well as Pat Natal of ASCE. On the subject of ASCE, the American Society of Civil Engineers, as a friendly reminder, their California region is hosting an infrastructure symposium on March 6th at LA MTA. Finally, with regard to the millennial generation, we heard from them fairly extensively at the San Francisco board meeting last April. They are key for making this project a success, and I encourage us to do everything we can to reach out to the millennial generation because, as they explained, this system represents how they access their employment and vacation destinations. Thank you so much for all that you do, and keep up the great work.
Thank you, Mr. Schwegel. Ted Hart, followed by George Fleming. Mr. Hart, good morning.
Good morning. My name is Ted Hart. I am the state coordinator for Tea Party Patriots regarding high-speed rail. I'm not opposed to the high-speed rail, but after over 2 years of attending your board meetings and all the hearings at the Capitol, I'm opposed to your business plan. That's a fiscal disaster and needless expenditures. I'd like to give you an example. Would be the authority's optimistic cost numbers, which depend on ridership values that are unproven, and in the case of the IOS operating between Merced and Los Angeles, as unstudied as they are unbelievable. The authority projects 5.8 million passengers on this 300-mile length of track connecting Los Angeles and Merced via Palmdale, Bakersfield, Hanford, and Fresno. Let's contrast that with the IOS with Amtrak's Acela, connecting the truly major population centers of Boston and Washington, D.C., via New York City, Philadelphia, Wilmington, Delaware, and Baltimore. Roughly 450 miles in length. It carries only 3.5 million riders per year. Not surprisingly, Acilla's projected revenue of $543 million is less than what the authority projects for its Merced to LA run in 2025, $592 million, or a medium scenario expressed in 2012 dollars. The reason that I dig into all of this is because it has to do with the question of subsidies that is very clearly laid out in Prop 1A, as you all know. The concern is the billions of dollars of debt that will be left to the children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. This may be okay in the world of Governor Brown's choo-choo to nowhere, but it's absolutely immoral, and we the people are going to do everything possible to protect our children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, which I have 5 of, waste of their money. So, back to the initial point is, these are facts and figures that, and I've been studying this thing without a question for over 2 years, and would like very much at some point to have some clarification as to how you arrive at some of this. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Fair enough. George Fleming, followed by Don Zweifel.
Perhaps this can be titled The Parade of Grandparents, because I might suggest that Mr. Ted is about to be, if already, a great-grandparent, hence some of his concern. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning, sir.
I'd like to know what it is about bankruptcy, unfunded obligations, and walls of debt that you folks apparently don't completely understand. Our various governments have already mortgaged our children and our grandchildren's financial futures far beyond any acceptable level of fiscal responsibility. Considering that fact, for you at this point in time in this chamber to be here considering even spending any more billions of the taxpayers' money on this bullet train to nowhere is irresponsible, it's a betrayal of public trust, and it's reckless. I'm suggesting, folks, that you do yourselves a favor and do the people of California an even bigger favor and pull the plug on this moonbeam madness. Do it today. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Don Zweifel, followed by Robert Allen. Good morning, sir.
Board members, it's good to see you, Tom. It's awfully good to see you, sir, again. May I, since I only have 2 minutes, let me do this very quickly. In regards to the plan for meeting the SBE goals, the estimated participation based upon current staffing plan, may I address an issue having to do with the Chambers Group? Evidently, I need a clarification. We need a clarification regarding awarding the entire goal to the Chambers Group. At least that's the impression that we're getting here. So the question would be is whether the Chambers Group is a prime. And then, of course, we also would like to ask a question about the SBEs as to whether, as you know, there's a 17% goal for SBEs, and it looks like there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 contractors, and the question is whether they are primes. There's no clarification on that. So what we are seeking here is the Chambers Group going to receive the entire? It looks on prima facie that the entire goal, 3% goal, is being awarded to the Chambers Group, and of course we have a problem with that. May I also mention, by the way, as a sidebar, that I'm on the Governor's Interagency Council for Veterans Affairs, Education Working Group, and Employment Working Group. So this is why I'm not representing them, however, but I did want you to know that I will be talking with Secretary Gravitt about this matter, and I guess that's basically all that I wanted to mention. Yes, thank you very much, board members.
Okay, thank you. We will look into that. Mr. Allen, Robert Allen, followed by Kevin Dayton. Morning, Bob.
Good morning, Dan. My concern is, as usual, about the blended rail. It's decidedly unsafe. It will be cause a lot of delays in the train service. The main thing I want to talk about today is about running high-speed rail up the Mulford line that Amtrak has been using for a long time. From Santa Clara, instead of going up the peninsula to San Francisco on the commute line, which is dangerous, that you run up the Mulford line used by Amtrak, and that you work with BART to move the station, you'll see it on the map there, move the delete the West Oakland station, build a new station which we would call San Francisco Bay Rail Station. That would be about 3,000 feet to the west along BART, and it would provide for a good intermodal station, and it would provide ultimately for high-speed rail to go on up to Sacramento without the cost of any tunneling, without the cost of any future Transbay tube, without the cost of underground rail terminal facilities in San Francisco. It would serve the public well, and it would be much safer than the method you propose with blended rail. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Next is Kevin Dayton. Good morning, Mr. Dayton, followed by Dan Dolan.
Good morning, Chairman Richard. My name is Kevin Dayton with Labor Issue Solutions, LLC. I am the person who wrote the analysis of the project labor agreement that is Addendum 8 in the request for proposal to the design-build entities. That's the analysis that the Building and Construction Trades Department, AFL-CIO, is upset about. I will note that their criticism of it did not criticize the accuracy of it. I'll point out a couple of things here. In your request for proposal, you have a section, and this is where the bids were due last Friday for the 5 design-build consortiums. Section 7.11.3 said the contractor will be required to comply with a community benefits agreement. And then in Section 10.1, it says that the authority won't recommend an award of the contract unless the entity has signed a letter of assent agreeing to be bound by the community benefits agreement. And then the Addendum 8 is a sample draft community benefits agreement, which is actually a project labor agreement where some language from the community benefits policy that you passed in December was stuck into it as the content. So you come very close to mandating a project labor agreement here. And you had mentioned, Chairman Richard, you wanted to find possibly a way to bridge the gap. I know it's difficult, but I will bring up a couple things. First, I think it would be worthwhile if the board had a discussion about this project labor agreement and how it would affect bidding and cost. And I'm not afraid to have, I think it would be good. This happens all the time all over the state with government agencies that consider project labor agreements. You discuss it and then you decide it. I also think there should be an effort to exempt building structures from any project labor agreements. The rail is probably going to be built by union workers anyway, but where we're getting to the stations and things like that, that's where you're going to be cutting out a lot of bidders that are non-union. So I'd like you to keep those in mind as you move forward with this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Dan Dolan, followed by Ross Browning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm pleased to notice that Lynn Shank and Jim Arnett were reappointed as directors of the board. Also, I wanted to applaud CEO Jeff Morales on the work that he and Dan Richard did last week, Thursday and Friday in Washington, D.C. Very impressed by the decision
Mr. Morales made to make a cost savings and increase the purchasing power of the authority by forming an alliance with the U.S. Department of Transportation and also the Amtrak as far as the train sets. And you'll notice, Mr. Morales, that you did that without using the RFP device. Over and over again, the engineers and other people have complained about the complexity and the wordiness and the difficulty and many people understanding the terms of the RFPs and how they're construed in favor of the authority in almost every way. And also there's the feeling that, which is true, that the state legislature has allowed Mr. Morales to use Caltrans on any contract and cancel contracts that don't fit for their purposes. And that's fine, but I just want the board to know that you have the responsibility to oversee decisions made by staff and Mr. Morales, and their decisions shouldn't be made in a vacuum. In fact, learning from this experience with the train sets, maybe Mr. Morales should broaden his thinking and consider having the U.S. Geological Survey work with the authority on the Antelope Valley tunnels. Similarly, he said that there's 3 inspection oversight layers, and I suggest why don't we introduce the 4th one, and that's having experts of the railroad community, particularly Union Pacific and Burlington Northern Santa Fe, partner with the authority and give their expertise and guidance when requested to things that Caltrans is brilliant as their engineers and management is. They don't build railroads for a living. They build highways. So there's things that they can help you with by just asking. And the same thing with the European high-speed partners of the different countries. They have the experience that will help you, but you have to ask for it. Similarly, Stuart Title explained in a conversation last week while you were in Washington to John Tapping and to Thomas Valenz that the business plan was inadequate as to addressing the multi-billion-dollar expenses of constructing the 11-mile tunnels through Antelope Valley, the cost of the heavy maintenance facility, the cost of world-class passenger stations. These are outside the scope of present RFPs, and Stuart Title wants to let the board and Mr. Morales know, since you weren't there for the phone call, and Chairman Richard know, that they're willing to, through your RFP process or some other partnering, they authorize $2 billion worth of title insurance for these expensive major improvements.
Thank you, Mr. Dolan. Ross Browning, followed by Dave Cross.
It's still morning, so good morning, Chairman Richards and board members. Ross Browning from Layton, California. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention an occurrence that happened last evening in Hanford, and there are 2 things that happened of significance. One was, and I don't know who wrote the letter, but it sounded official, and I will find out when I get back. The letter was read by the city to the city council, stating that the western alignment in Hanford had been chosen as the desired alignment. That's something that kind of surprised us. But I must say that the leadership and the citizens of Hanford and Kings County stayed the course, and a vote was taken, and the vote was 4-1 for the city of Hanford to not select or not give their stamp of approval to a given alignment. That ball still falls in your court. Leads me to say that I think that we need to see more transparency We've seen some, but certainly not anything that any of us expected. We need more transparency in the operation. There are too many things happening behind the scenes, too many things trying to take an end run, and so far we've been able to stay ahead of most of them, but once in a while you guys win one. So I just want to tell you that it looks like everything's not peaches and cream in Camelot, so.
Mr. Browning, let me just, thank you, sir, and let me just say, while it's possible that at some point in the future the board could express what's called a preferred alignment under CEQA, no such decision has been made. Nothing like that has come to this body. And so I just want to assure you and your neighbors that we are proceeding under the guidance of the CEQA process, CEQA and NEPA process, and we'll continue to do that.
As I said, it was read by the city manager, so it's not something from the office of the.
I was just looking at Jeff Morales like, did you send a letter? He's going, I didn't send a letter. No, so we'll check that out. But
maybe you guys need more transparency. I don't know. I intend to find out, take a look at it.
That's fine, and I just wanted to comment on that because I know that these issues in Kings County are important, but we're going to proceed in accordance with the law and in accordance with the public participation process. Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Thank you much.
Okay, Dave Cross, followed by our last speaker, Marvin Dean.
Good morning, gentlemen. My name is Dave Cross. I'm an architect from Bakersfield, California, a member of the Bakersfield Downtown Business Association, a member of the Bakersfield American Institute of Architects, a member of the Kern County Minority Contractors Association, and also I represent many stakeholders in Bakersfield and Kern County and have for many years. Been working on this for 12 years, more or less, in that we owned the largest piece of property right adjacent to where the project is going. The station is going in Bakersfield. The city took it under eminent domain the day after you announced where the station was going. They filed the eminent domain papers. Took them 4 years to get it. But I want to take this opportunity to hand to the board the most becoming efforts that I could announce to you on your work in very adverse circumstances to bring the project to this point, and it looks as though you're going to have a successful conclusion all the way through the whole state of California. But I'm here mainly to discuss the so-called, as has been described here, as the project labor agreement, which is flying under the disguise of a community benefits agreement, according to the title, in which you call addendum number 8. And it took me a long time to find that. It didn't come out until December 26th. I've been searching for such an agreement going back quite a few months, and as Mr. Jeff Morales will recall, that came up in Bakersfield a few months ago at the Bakersfield luncheon by the Kern Minority Contractors Association. I would like to ask that agreement to be amended to be fair, just, and equitable to 100% of all of the available workforces and also those underemployed individuals that could be brought up to the stage of providing labor for this project. I understand one of the biggest concerns is there enough labor to perform the work involved in the 4 years that this work has to be done on the first $6 billion worth of work. And I understand also that the board has set aside 30% of that for some so-called special arrangement amongst labor, but I don't see how that is tied into the labor agreement. I wrote architectural specifications for many years around such agreements and so on, and I think if the board's policy is to provide for this 30%, it definitely has not been done in this draft agreement called Community Benefits Agreement. Another quick thing is that in Bakersfield, as you know, the city and the county have both, in, let's say, recent time periods, turned against what they were for before they were against it, the high-speed rail coming through Bakersfield. And there are meetings going on, and Diane Gomez, I know, has been attending those meetings. But also from the Bakersfield side, I understand that the city has invited those against the high-speed rail to come and be a part of those meetings, and I can't understand why those who are for the high-speed rail aren't invited as well. I think a fair and just and equitable level playing field would be in order, and I would assume that the High-Speed Rail Authority would have the power to invite those who are for, if the city is inviting those who are against. Also, in the olden days, this board used to meet in Bakersfield on occasion. I can't understand why they haven't met there for quite some time. I hope they will consider that, maybe at their next meeting, maybe at their April meeting, and that there's going to be a group called the Advisory Board to the High-Speed Rail Authority is going to meet there. And I'm just hopeful that you folks will perhaps consider that. And I thank you very much for letting me go over it in such an audacious way. Thank you.
Well, thank you, sir. And let me assure you that Mr. Morales and I were discussing where the board's going to meet this upcoming year. And certainly that's on the agenda. We like to try to spread the meetings around, and we appreciate the fact that a lot of people who've come here today, come to our other meetings, travel long distances.
And I'm sorry I was late because the train from Bakersfield didn't arrive until 10 after, which the last leg was on a bus.
You know, sir, we're actually trying to address that very issue.
Thank you.
Thank you. Last one is Marvin Dean.
Thank you. I want to, first of all, before I start with my remarks, I wanted to do a short, quick token of appreciation to this board, the staff of the High-Speed Rail Authority, and also to your Small Business Advisory Group. Because some of us believe that we've come a long ways in getting this project brought forward. And one of the things we did at our conference in January 10th and 11th in Bakersfield, and I want to say this before I move forward, we just took a pause in the conference, and we're going to have part 2 in Bakersfield, April 18th and 19th. And I'm going to be asking that our keynote speaker for our lunch that had to bow out because you were at a rightful place in Sacramento, Washington, making sure this project was protected, that we're going to be asking the chairman and the CEO to attend that meeting. We'll talk more about that later. But what we did was, at our dinner, we gave little tokens of appreciation for everybody that did something in behalf of the DBE community in terms of showing that if people are doing good things, they need to be recognized. And so we made these mugs up, something like the Press Club does, and it basically is our 6th annual High-Speed Rail Conference. Thank you for supporting small business, DBE, disadvantaged veterans, and micro-business contracting opportunity. So I've left enough of these here just for the members of your team because I want to just show our appreciation.
Thank you. We're going to have to get a legal opinion as to whether we can accept these.
Okay. I'll let you guys figure that out.
Yeah, we'll figure that out.
The other thing I wanted to say is, and that is about, I want to hand these out real fast, and I'll be real brief.
While you're doing that, Vice Chair Shank pointed out that if we're not allowed to accept them, we'll make sure that they just go to the generalized office and so that everybody can use them at the High-Speed Rail Authority.
And that is what I've given you real quickly, and this is addressing this draft community benefit agreement, Addendum 8. We have no major problems with it, but we do have some suggested things that we'd like to have included in this. And that's just, there's 2 pages, 2 letters. One is from our association, and the other one is from the Oakland Black Board of Trades and Commerce. They're going to talk specifically about language that they'd like to see in the agreement. But I want to just talk about our trade association, and you'll see there's several organizations that support this. And it basically comes down to 3 items. One is effective targeting outreach to those 10 categories of the disadvantaged people. We believe that more needs to be given emphasis on small trade associations and the folks that have a history of working with that targeted group. Because we don't think, and there's nothing against the unions, nothing against the merit shops, nothing against the workforce investment groups, but if we look at a lot of these projects, you don't see a large increase of those particular categories of people you're talking about to be included on these projects. So we're saying that you need to play a role in this process for outreach in those targeted areas with people that do this every day and have a history of working with those effective groups for targeting outreach so we can get those numbers. The second piece of it is a lot of those folks, if you walked up to them and gave them an opportunity to go to get a job, they're not job ready. So we think there has to be also emphasis on job readiness for those targeted groups. And again, who's going to do the job readiness? It need to be people that have a demonstration history of affecting those groups, can go out there and get them, find them where they are, and get them ready. And then the third one is pre-apprenticeship. Effective pre-apprenticeship with the folks that can address that targeted group and get them ready. And then that group, the group that's selected to do that, would then be used to do a referral into the state apprenticeship program. We've now got them ready. And working in partnership with the High-Speed Rail Authority, the prime contractors, and the unions, or however we're going to be actually doing the training. But I think that's an oversight that you're not giving enough emphasis for those of us that's on the ground, in the trenches, that support this project and support diversity on this project. And if we don't address it, it's not going to just happen on its own. It's going to take heavy work and lifting from all of us to make this thing work, to reach these goals, because it's going to be very challenging for all of us. Then the last thing I'll say briefly, some of you heard about the Fresno conference we had. And I want to just say what that was and what's not. It wasn't about taking any sides, whether it should be union, non-union, none of that. It was about having a conversation and making sure there'd be labor peace in the valley when this project goes forward. And it's like we may not all agree, but I think if we can come to this thing in good faith and have a conversation now before the project start in good faith, we can bridge differences. Nobody's going to get 100%, but there's ways for all of us to work on this project, and that's what it was all about. And we're going to be having more of these as we go forward, and we want to be help with this, not be a problem to this thing, but we support it once it moves forward. So thank you for giving me extra time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dean. Appreciate those comments very much. Thank you all for public comments today, and I want to thank Mr. Dolan for doing something that I was thinking about while the speakers were talking, and I realized that I had been remiss because I appropriately congratulated Mr. Hartnett on his reappointment to the board, but actually since we last met, between our last meeting and this meeting, Governor Brown reappointed our Vice Chair, Lynn Schenck, to the board, and we were very, very pleased about that. Ms. Schenck, as you all know, really was the architect of most of this going back several decades and also during her time in the Congress. So we were very pleased that the governor asked her to continue her service on this board. Thank you, Lynn. Okay, with that, with that, we'll move now to item 1 of the agenda, the approval of the minutes. Mr. Flens. Your name is here next to it, but don't look so shocked when I looked at you. I guess what I'll do is just ask for a motion to approve the minutes. They've been moved by Vice Chair Schenck.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Hartnett. I think please call the roll.
Vice Chair Schenck?
Yes.
Vice Chair Richards?
Yes.
Mr. Umberg?
Yes.
Mr. Hartnett?
Yes.
Mr. Rossi? Chairman Richard?
Yes. Okay, and just to clarify, that was for both the minutes of November 14th, 2012 and December 3rd, 2012. Okay. Next is the informational update on the supplemental alternatives analysis for the Central Valley Y. Mr. Morales, do you want to introduce this, or should we just turn to Mr. McLaughlin?
Mark, go ahead. We can just proceed. This is the board had asked for an update on the Y.
Yes.
We're coming back and letting you know where we are with this and with regard to further analysis of alternatives, where we are with our partner agencies in terms of their review, and what the stakeholder outreach has been and will be as we move forward to the next phases.
And good morning, Mark. I'm sure you heard Ms. Radabau's comments. If there are any you're prepared to address today, that would be good. If they're not, then you could perhaps follow up with us on those items.
Yes, I heard her comments.
Okay, great.
Thank you. Again,
excuse me.
There it is. And I'd especially like to hear, which I assume you'd be prepared to say, when she said that her membership was not contacted, no one knew about this. So that's obviously, if that's true, that's troubling. So I'd like to hear something about that too. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Thanks, Mark.
Again, good morning, Mr. Chair and the board. Mark McLaughlin. I'm the Deputy Director of Environmental Planning for the High-Speed Rail Authority of California. I do have with me Gary Kennerly of the PMT. I have some technical questions that may come up from the board today. He's shown strong leadership on this section for us, and especially with public outreach. Again, this agenda item provides an informational update, again, on the status of planning for the San Jose to Merced section. Back in May of 2012, the board directed staff to come back and keep the board apprised of progress on the Central Valley Y area. This presentation will give you an overview of our staff approach to San Jose Merced section as a whole, and particularly the Central Valley Y area. Which one?
Mark, the slides you're going to show the same as the hard copy?
That's correct.
We just need to make sure the public can see them.
Okay. Thank you. So the San Jose Merced section is 125 miles long, starting from the San Jose Diridon station to the downtown station in Merced, with a station in Gilroy. The project section alignments were studied in the supplemental AA in July of 2011. This section has 5 subsections of varying size. Briefly, they are the San Jose Station approach, the Monterey Highway area, Morgan Hill to Gilroy, and within this, there's 2 alignments under consideration: the US 101 and UPRR, and 2 alignments under consideration: the US 101, UPRR, 2 station locations in Gilroy that are under consideration, which include downtown Gilroy and east of Gilroy. We're evaluating design options and facilities to address feedback received and the need to operate the San Jose station as a temporary terminus under the phasing approach in the 2012 business plan. Pacheco Pass is another. We are working with the resource agencies regarding impacts in and around the San Luis Reservoir and the San Joaquin Valley crossing in the Central Ys. This area will be the focus of today's presentation. In the area from San Jose over the Pacheco Pass, staff and the consulting teams have been involved in numerous efforts to update the assumptions for the section and incorporate, again, the phasing concepts in the 2012 business plan. For example, the authority has supported and participated in the City of San Jose development of visual design guidelines and work with the city and local stakeholders on the San Jose station approach. Also, the authority has also developed an alignment alternative to minimize impacts on Coyote Creek Parkway, and including the creek itself and the riparian habitat. The high-speed rail on this slide, the high-speed rail project phasing raises the need for maintenance of equipment and infrastructure facilities south of San Jose. We are looking at sites of roughly 65 acres for light maintenance and storage. There are promising site options in the vicinity of Morgan Hill and also south of Gilroy. The authority has supported the City of Gilroy's planning process for developing its own views on what an appropriate way of implementing high-speed rail in Gilroy would be. The City concluded that process in February of 2012 with a recommendation for downtown Gilroy Station. Staff has also been coordinating with the Department of Water Resources and U.S. Bureau of Reclamation to minimize impacts and develop mitigation strategies for crossing the San Luis Reservoir. In accordance with the authority's memorandum of understanding with the Army Corps, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, staff will submit a proposed range of alternatives to these agencies for their concurrence, recommending carrying forward the options that you see here. Thank you. For the Central Valley Y area, you directed staff to do further environmental analysis. The staff approach to handling the Central Valley Y area, where the high-speed rail systems north and south and east and west portions converge, was presented back to the board back in July of 2011, prior to the release of the Merced-Fresno draft EIR-EIS. The described approach was to expand upon the range of alternatives and to add study of an SR-152 route to be in consideration along with Avenue 21 and Avenue 24. This approach was specifically described in the Merced-Fresno draft EIS and again in the final EIR-EIS. Again, the board made no decision on a preferred alignment for the Central Valley Y area back in May of 2012 when you certified the Merced-Fresno final EIR-EIS. Instead, the board opted to carry forward the Central Valley Y decision as shown within the rectangular box as part of the San Jose to Merced section. The board also asked staff to look at ways to expedite the Y area so as to bring resolution on alignments in this area sooner than later. Specifically, the board directed the staff to carry forward for further study and analysis all high-speed rail elements in the Y area, the box, so to speak. Such analysis shall determine whether any of the current Y alternatives should be changed, augmented, eliminated, or additional Y alternatives considered. The authority staff and our consultant team looked carefully at multiple potential options for the Central Valley Y, also known as in the box. These potential options follow the three east-west connections, Avenue 21, Avenue 24, and SR-152 in combination with the three north-south corridors, which are west of Chowchilla, SR-99 UPRR, and east of Chowchilla. These potential additional options or adjustments to existing options encompass a spaghetti bowl, so to speak, of possibilities. These include two options that would go east of Chowchilla, and including options that would move along Road 11 and Road 13. The various alignments were developed to minimize the impacts to protected resources and address concerns raised by the local community. Community input favored east and west alignments immediately adjacent to existing transportation facilities, especially SR-152 as the dominant east-west facility. North-south connections along property boundaries to minimize the splitting of existing farm operations and minimize impacts to sensitive community resources and schools. Next slide. Thank you. Based on staff analysis and stakeholder feedback, we are recommending to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency that 6 alignments be carried forward into a supplemental EIR-EIS that is focused only on the Y area. There are 6 alignments to be carried forward, 3 east-west options and 3 north-south options as shown here on the map. They are consistent with the board's prior direction to include adding SR-152 in conjunction with Avenue 21 and Avenue 24Ys. The authority will be issuing a Merced-Fresno supplemental draft EIR-EIS on the Central Valley Y area only, and that this will proceed in advance of the draft EIR-EIS that will evaluate the San Jose area across the Pacheco Pass. As directed in May by the board, this approach is intended to bring resolution more quickly to this area of the system. So slide 9. To recap, the next steps in the process are as follows. In accordance with the authority's memorandum of understanding, again, with the Army Corps of Engineers and U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, staff will submit 6 proposed ranges of alternatives to these agencies for their concurrence. for the Central Valley Y area box only, and for the San Jose to across the Pacheco Pass. Staff will be conducting stakeholder and public outreach over the next several weeks and months to be followed up with supplemental alternatives analysis report for the Central Valley Y area in March. Our plan is to ensure that the supplemental alternatives analysis report clearly describes the input received from the regulatory agencies, affected local governments, and the public. We also plan to take all that input into account, along with technical information, to develop a staff recommendation on what we're calling a proposed action to identify in the supplemental draft EIR-EIS for the Y area, which we anticipate releasing later this year. The draft EIR-EIS for the San Jose to Y area would then follow later in 2015. Last slide. Thank you. Following public comment, we anticipate a nod rod for the San Jose to Central Valley Y in the fall of 2016. Thank you. I know that was a lot of information.
No, it was good. Just a quick question before I turn to my colleagues. I'm sorry I missed one thing because I was looking ahead on the chart. So the piece on you would expect EIS determination on the portion outside of the Y proceeding towards San Jose in 2015. Did I understand that correctly? Maybe we could go back to the last two slides.
Should be
on the next
2016 San Jose to Central Valley Y. For the San Jose to the Central Valley Y.
Okay, so that's when?
2016.
Okay.
Excuse me.
All right. Questions from members? Vice Chair Richards, are you trying to see if you can turn on your mic?
I'm trying, thank you. I wanted to just also clarify for a moment what the chairman was just asking, Mark. So what's happening with the Y specifically? Is it still a part, are you still proposing as a part of the San Jose Merced EIR, or is that being restudied now with a supplemental EIS EIR?
Yes, for the Merced to Fresno section.
The second thing I said is what's correct, so that will be a part of a second study. Okay. So the implications of that, I would assume, would be to help expedite the process of making a decision in the Y.
Correct.
Which I frankly applaud you on that, Jeff. The many meetings that we have had with stakeholders and people who have contacted us clearly would identify one of the major concerns is the lack of specificity as what's going to happen in the area. So I think you're addressing that, and I think that's exactly the appropriate approach. Secondly, it's certainly been my experience in this area, and I've met with a number of the stakeholders, as has the chairman, and now Ms. Gomez, who has joined us. And I would say that so far as Diana Gomez's participation, I have had numbers of unsolicited comments extolling the benefits and the appreciation for Diana and the team in moving this process forward, and specifically in the Y area. And Jeff, you should be congratulated on the staff you're putting together. Diana Gomez, you're doing a magnificent job. I have yet to receive a negative comment. And that in combination with moving this forward, I think is going to benefit the stakeholders in the area. I'm also troubled about what Ms. Radaba stated earlier, and that is that there should be every effort made, in my opinion, to meet with her members. And as far as I know, if we have not done that in the past, that's inappropriate. Any meetings that have or will be set up in the future, I would encourage us to ensure that we participate. I think our experience thus far has been in talking with and meeting with the stakeholders and interested parties and electeds. We have gone a long way to improving the relationship that we've had with those communities, and I think this effort you're now making will be applauded in moving this Y forward, so long as it's in strict compliance with the requirements of CEQA and NEPA. Thank you.
I just want to associate myself with Tom's comments. I think they're well said all around. Thank you very much. Yes, Director Umberg.
Just a quick question. So the first time we'll have an action to take on this particular issue in the future is in April. That's what you anticipate?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see.
All right. Mr. Morales, did you want to comment?
Just a few comments following up on Mr. Richards' comments and some of the others and from Ms. Shank earlier about the outreach. I want to expand on that a little bit. Moving forward with this piece is very much intended to do several things. One is try to remove the cloud of indecision over the Y section and get to decision sooner, get to resolution sooner. It's also a prudent step to take as a contingency should conditions allow that if we have the ability to move forward and build north and close that gap as part of the early construction, we would be able to do that as a result of these decisions. I do want to say that the work done to date has been influenced and informed by meetings with key stakeholders in the region. What I would like to do for the board, and then we can share certainly with the public, are some, we can go back and compile a list of the meetings that have taken place to date, and certainly the meetings that will be going forward. Part of the purpose of today's presentation is to really kick off the next round of public outreach and provide the information, including information on how decisions get made as we go forward. One of the important things that I think has not been made clear enough to people is that we do not control the decision making in many respects on these. The Army Corps, the EPA, other stakeholders have key roles in this process, and one of the points of our outreach is to make sure, again, people understand why certain routes are under consideration, why some may not be, and how decisions will be made going forward. But there will be an intensive public outreach launched now with this presentation having been made to the board and in future decision making as we go forward.
That's good.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just make one final comment that I missed, and I think Jeff was alluding to it. We also have an opportunity right now because of the economic environment and the possibility with the funds that we have available to leverage those funds to get us all the way to Merced is something that we clearly can't overlook.
That's good. Vice Chair Shank.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. During public comment, there was sort of a theme about transparency and outreach and conflict of interest and all of those kinds of things. I've been in this, quote, business for a long time, and I know that rumors are very quick to be born, and in this Internet age, you get multiple bursts of rumors very quickly, and while it's probably more fun to believe them, I would just like to say to everyone here and to the public at large that I personally, and I know that I speak for my colleagues because I know them and the staff, are committed to transparency, to openness, to public participation and involvement. Yes, there are going to be mistakes. You know, this is fast-paced. It's under a laser, and things are going to go awry once in a while, hopefully not too often. But they will be just that, mistakes. There are no backroom deals. There are no backroom meetings. I've served on many boards and commissions over the past 40 years, and I've never seen one that is so committed to following not just the letter of the law, but the spirit of the law. And some of you may choose to believe the worst. That's fine. That's certainly your privilege. But from the perspective of this board, myself, our chairman, our CEO, we personally want nothing but to build this and to build it as best we can with the cooperation of the public. There will be disagreement, but it doesn't stem from nefarious doings behind. I guess we don't have smoke-filled rooms anymore, but whatever is in the room, the public will always be there. And as to Mr. Morales himself, yes, he did have a brief stint in the private sector, but his heart and soul has been devoted to public service, and I emphasize the public service in Chicago with the transit there, and then heading up Caltrans for 5 years here in California, where I had the opportunity to closely observe him. So we are fortunate to have him in this position, and someday children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, of which I have several myself, will thank us for what we did here over this past years and into the future.
Thank you, Ms. Shea. Thank you. I think this was a timely briefing to bring to us as an informational item. I think that hearing the public input just causes us to redouble our efforts to reach out, but I don't want to imply that there haven't been meetings, but we will, as our two vice chairs have suggested, do everything we can to make sure that this is proceeding apace and with public involvement. So any other questions for Mr. McLaughlin? Thanks. Ms. Butterbaugh, I'm sorry, but if we start opening up to public comment again, we just never close. But I'll be happy to talk with you afterwards.
Part of the San Jose or not?
Let me offer this to you. Mr. McLaughlin, Mr. Morales will be here after we adjourn and have that discussion with you so that you can convey that back to your members if there's any lack of clarity. And if there's...
Anybody else can listen in.
And anybody else can listen in. If there's still a lack of clarity, then reach out to those of us on the board. We want to make sure that this is done in a way that everybody understands where we're going. Mr. McLaughlin, thank you very much.
Thank you. I just wanted to make one clarification. In March, we'll come back with the supplemental AA for the Central Valley Y. Correct.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item is item 3, which is the proposal to award the project and construction management contract. Diana Gomez is going to present this item. And if it's possible, either Ms. Gomez or Mr. Morales, one of the questions that was raised this morning by Mr. Oliveira was about the relationship between the CM function and the prime contractor and the PMT. So I know we did discuss this when you came to the board for the authority to enter into this agreement, but it'd probably be good to just remind people of that. Ms. Gomez, you really have a problem because so far everybody is just saying good things about you. So if you stub your toe, we'll have to put it up on the website, I think.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for the comments, and I'm really glad to be here. And when I was introduced, I really didn't have the opportunity to meet every single board member, but I do appreciate the opportunity to work on this project, and I'm really happy to be part of the team. So thank you again for that, Chairman. So what I'd like to do is talk about the contract for project and construction management services for CP1. So we are requesting authorization to execute a contract for the project construction management, the PCM services for CP1, our design build contract. So the PCM will provide additional resources and support to the authority for CP1 as we go through the evaluation process and also the design and construction process. The PCM will provide the authority on-site management staff, providing oversight of the design builder contractor and of the contract management services. So the PCM will serve as a consultant, and what we're trying to do is get the PCM consultant on board before we start the final evaluation process for the design build contract. And by taking action at this January board meeting, this will allow us to use the PCM during the evaluation process, and it will it will provide additional services to us. If we approve this today, this will allow us to issue a notice to proceed, again, prior to the CP1 contract being awarded. And this will allow for the PCM to be on board through the evaluation process, and also, in terms of allowing an early learning curve. And this will allow for the PCM to be more effective once we start with the CPM contract. We did go through a very, the evaluation process was very standard evaluation process. There was 4 teams that provided bids. We first had an evaluation process and it is outlined in the memo to you in terms of the criteria that we used. After that, we then had oral interviews of the 3 of the contractors, and then based on that, we selected Wong Harris. And so we are recommending that we approve that the board approve the execution of the contract with Wong Harris for the project construction management services of CP1.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Gomez. Mr. Morales?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a few things, and then certainly we'd be happy to take any questions or comments. One, I just want to be clear, this is, the way we're proceeding is very much in line with the authority that the board had provided in allowing us to move forward through the procurement process, and we're bringing on, if approved, this first program construction manager consistent with that direction. I want to note also, I think something of significance, the teams that are the primes who have joined together to form this team are both California-based firms, which we're pleased about. They have extensive experience in transit and rail programs, not just here in California, but around the country.
You're talking about the teams for the PCM.
The PCM, right. Yes, right. The firm being brought before you for approval. Extensive experience in transit and rail delivery, as well as in design-build programs, both in transit and rail and design-build experience with the state previously. We have achieved something very important to the board, which is the 30% small business participation and the sub-goals within that. I'm also pleased to say that of the small businesses that are part of those teams, over half of them are located in the Central Valley, have their bases there. All of them will be doing work in the Central Valley. So we think it's a very good beginning to our contracting, and we're pleased to bring it before you, and certainly be happy to respond to any questions.
Mr. Morales, could you just take a moment and just remind the public, what is the role of the project construction manager vis-a-vis the prime contractors for the actual construction that we will be selecting later this year?
The construction manager here, so the firm, this being the first one being presented, serves as our agent in implementing the construction contracts. So among other things, on a task order basis, will ensure that the design builder is adhering to all of the conditions of the contract, is performing its work in accordance with the specifications. They'll be reviewing their work product, reporting back to us, ensuring consistency with all aspects, from, again, the technical engineering aspects to small business participation, reporting of payment. Diana, you can expand maybe a little bit more, but I mean, it's really, again, they are acting as our agent, directly contracting with us to oversee the activities of the design builder.
Right.
Yeah. And they'll be doing some survey work, some environmental work, some oversight of the actual construction, and again, ensuring that the contractor is fulfilling the requirements when it comes to the quality of what they're building.
Okay. Questions from members. Director Hartnett.
A few comments and questions. First, it's clear that the role of the project management construction firm is really important for the success of everything we do in implementing a project like this, and this is certainly standard even on much smaller projects to have teams like this to draw on their expertise and to have them do those kinds of things that are absolutely essential, but under our staff's direction and control. And I think we've talked in the past about making sure that those kinds of decisions that should be made by folks in a governmental position make those decisions, and that those that we rely on as our agents play their appropriate role as well, but subject to accountability to our staff. And so I'd emphasize once again the critical importance of our staff in connection with this as well. Secondly, I think when we get reports like this and recommendations, while we have the ability as board members to inquire before the meetings to get additional information as we might like, if we have questions that will help form the public presentation and help inform us, I think it's helpful to have more information than less in our public reports to the board. I think it would have been better to have more information on the team that was recommended in the report about their background, about their expertise, about their history of performance, so that, well, we can ask if the board it's better for us to have that information ahead of time. So I would like to know a little bit more about the specific projects and the history of the firm today, to have that discussed. I think that's important. Additionally, I understand how these teams are selected. I've been through this process before, and I appreciate the selection process, the rigor that was applied to this, and so I don't have any issue with the process whatsoever. I think it's the expected and required process. But I do like to know in the evaluation team, not necessarily the names of the people who are part of that, but the 5-member team, what positions they held. So as this recommendation comes forward, I know who has vetted them through this process, or at least by position and experience. So those are the two areas that I'd like to have more information before we actually act on this sitting.
Should we let Mr. Morales comment on that, or Director Umberg, do you want to supplement those?
Actually, this is a follow-on to Mr. Hartnett's comment. He was just much more articulate than I will be or would have been. It would be useful, I think, to know both the evaluation team and also a bit about the subcontractors. And in fact, if we could, I'm interested in finding out at least a paragraph about two things. One, the role that they would play and who made that decision, whether it was the prime that made the decision as to the various roles, or whether we in our RFQ or wherever made that decision. And then something about each of these subcontractors, who they are, what do they do, why they're there, that kind of thing.
Okay. Mr. Morales.
Let me, I'll ask Diana to fill in. I'll just give you a sense of some of the projects that, again, the firms, the prime firms have been involved in, performed this same sort of role as a prime. The BART extension, the Berryessa extension, they're there.
That's to San Jose.
San Jose, the Phoenix light rail line project, these are all multi-billion-dollar projects. The SMART project, Sonoma Marin, they're in a similar role there. Something the chairman will be familiar with, the SFO airtrain system, and the BART extension to SFO are some of the projects. So again, the significance of those being all of them mega projects, had design build elements, and their efforts involved overseeing, in fact, potentially some of the firms that might be involved with the design build. On the other side with the state, they've also worked on the I-405 and the SR-22 widening projects, design build projects that were done by the state. That's a sampling of the projects that they've been involved with. In terms of our evaluation team, Diana led that team. We had Diana lead it because, again, this first contract is happening within the Central Valley. We wanted to make sure she was directly involved with that She can tell you about the others on the team. From an oversight and implementation perspective, Diana will work with Frank Vaca and the project delivery team to oversee the construction manager and carrying out their responsibilities as they go forward. Mr. Umberg, on your questions on the small business,
let me just amend. Sure. I don't expect that we're going to go through each of those subcontractors today. Well, my suggestion is that with respect to them, if I could get that information, anyone else that wishes it, sometime subsequent to me, that's fine.
Sure. Let me absolutely just talk in general terms. The 30% goal is attached to the procurement. Each of the bidding teams knew that is the goal in place. One of the criterion used in evaluating them is their compliance with the 30% goal. The composition of that 30% is up to each of the bidders to determine. We do not dictate who is on their team, who is not. We do ensure that, in fact, the teams they have identified are, in fact, certified small businesses with the state and in good standing with the state. As the project goes forward, because this is a task order-based contract, if some of those small businesses are there to perform a very specific task and we modify that task, that could affect the overall small business participation. That's from our end. The obligation on the part of the contractor is anything they have identified to be performed by a small business needs to be performed by a small business. So if, for instance, a firm for some reason were not able to perform it, they would have to substitute another small business to perform that same work going forward.
Great. Okay. Vice Chair Richards, you had a question?
I thought that there was one other question without specifying by name, but can you tell us a little bit about who the evaluation panel was?
Maybe Mike.
So we had our risk manager as one of then we had our small business manager, and then we had two of our contract managers who are currently helping with the A&E contracts, and then myself was leading the team.
All state employees.
All authority employees.
Right.
And in terms of just a quick what some of the small business will be doing. Some of them will be doing document control. Some of them will be doing construction oversight. Some of them will be doing surveying. One of them will be doing some outreach. One of them will be doing environmental testing. And one of them will be helping with utility relocation. So I don't know exactly which were the ones, but those are the kinds of work that the small business will be doing. And they were brought forward by the prime contractor, which is a joint venture.
Okay. I'm sorry. Mr. Richards, did you finish?
I just had one other question. So with regards to the contract itself, I'm sure it's the form and content of the contract is required by the state of California. Do we prepare that internally, or is that the document itself?
All of our contracts are developed consistent and based on a procurement manual that's developed by the state, by the Department of General Services. Mr. Philens reviews the contracts to ensure consistency, and compliance with those standards. But I wouldn't say boilerplate, but it is standard language that is developed and used by other state agencies, all state agencies.
Okay. Thank you. Vice Chair Shank.
Yeah, thank you. We all want to think that the best of everyone, but on a project of this size and projects much smaller, there is a lot of opportunity for fraud, theft, etc. Is it the role of these PCMs to oversee and ensure that there is no fraud, that the quality of material is as it should be, so that we don't run into the big dig kinds of problems where there was quality control issues, there was a lot of theft. I harken back to President Reagan when he said, trust but verify. So who's going to be doing the verifying in that?
So they will be doing the verifying. So they will be assisting and ensuring that there is no fraud, no theft, and they will be doing, some of the checks and ensuring that the contractor that is hired for the construction oversight is doing what they need to be doing. They'll be doing some of their own inspection and some of their own tests to ensure that what the contractor is doing is to specification.
I, for one, would like to have a deeper dive on that, and how are they going to do that? What are their standards? What are their processes for oversight in that area?
Okay.
If I can get that.
Sure.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, Mr. Fraud and Abuse Protection over here, Director Rossi, who chairs our Finance and Audit Committee.
Yes. Along the lines that Lynn just brought up, this is very important. More important to me, however, is I want to know what the reporting mechanism is back to the board, that in fact the reviews are being done, and if there are any exceptions or violations, what the solutions and mitigations are to those things and the time frames in which those mitigations are to take effect.
One of the things that we are doing is developing a manual that will contain what kind of reports we will be developing, the authority, the contractor, and the PCM, and the PMT. So we are in the process of developing that manual. So then there will be standard reports as we move down to the south. And so I don't have the details of
That's fine.
but we are in the process of doing that.
But I would suggest to you, in the process of developing those manuals, that you run them by the audit committee before they become, simply because I'm going to want to, the audit committee is going to want to understand the risk management functions and we want to be able to report to the board that, in fact, we are doing what we said we're going to do.
Yeah.
Thank you.
If there are no other comments from members, I'll just make two observations and then ask a question of my own. First, I want to thank Director Hartnett for the way he articulated the issues there. I have to say, I got home late last night from the East Coast, and thank you, United Airlines. I was 4 hours late and opened up the book, read through this item, and I couldn't really express it, but I did feel as though I just didn't have enough of a handle on things. There was a lot of information about the process, and that was good in terms of laying out what the various selection criteria were. But then there was just a one line, and we recommend this company. So to use our president's words, I think it's a really good teachable moment that because of the comments that Mr. Hartnett made, supplemented by those of his colleagues, I think it kind of gives us a template for going forward for presentation, so that we take the information that you did provide us, but also something about the evaluation, the evaluators, and making sure that there is a descriptive material about the winning company and what their particular expertise is and how they'll do it. So I think that was teachable moment number one. The second thing comes from the comments of Vice Chair Shank, followed by Mr. Rossi, the head of the Finance and Audit Committee, which is that as I was listening to Mr. Rossi's comments, I thought it really boils down to one very, very simple thing. How do we make sure if something does go wrong that that information comes to this board? I mean, obviously, Mr. Morales and his staff have to deal with it, and that's fine, but they should be bringing to the board, there's an exception, there's something outside of the normative process, needs to come in through the Finance and Audit Committee. Certainly, I would expect, knowing Mr. Morales, it'll be with, and here's how we're dealing with it. But we just need to make sure that our protocols are in place so that those things do trigger information flowing to the board, because we're the representatives of the public as appointed by the governor and the Speaker of the Assembly and the President of the Senate. So if we can reflect on that a little bit, think about how we drive that into this process, I think that would be very good. And so this gives us an opportunity to improve the process over what I'm sure was very diligent. And you did give us in the package the evidence that that this team had met the DBE goals. I want to commend you for that, because I also think it's important for the public to know that we are keeping our eye on that and that we want to make sure that these goals are adhered to. and then just supplementing that in the future with sort of an annotation of the kinds of works that each of these DBs is doing, as has been suggested. So I think that's all very good, and I think it's been a useful conversation. I had one question which I wanted to raise, and that was we are going to have 5 construction packages. We have a construction manager, and as has been said, this is the owner's representative. When I served on the BART board for 12 years, on our major construction projects, we always had a construction management firm that reported basically to the management, and they oversaw the projects, and there it was relevant because we were using design build to build BART to San Francisco Airport. In my private sector experience in the energy industry, for all the independent power projects, there's always an owner's rep, which is some type of engineering firm that represents the owners. And Mr. Rossi will know often is something that the bankers are very concerned about how that function is being performed. So my only question was this. This is for construction package 1. Presumably, we could and would have a separate determination as to whether there'd be a competition for the other construction packages, which means that one of two things could happen. If I'm a losing bidder or somebody else, I'm going to want to know, does this person now have the inside track where they're going to be doing this for the other contracts, or is that going to be something that is going to be thrown to open competition? On the other hand, if it is going to be open competition, we could conceivably have 5 different PCMs for the 5 different construction packages. That strikes me as something that is less than efficient. So could you just enlighten us, Mr. Morales, on the thinking on that? Mr. Rossi, did you have a question first?
I was just going to add to that. I think the issue of efficiency, Mr. Chairman, is less important than the issue of consistency and quality.
And that, thank you. What Mr. Rossi just said was that the issue of efficiency is less important than the issue of consistency and quality, and I sort of used the term broadly, but that was really where I was thinking. So, Mr. Morales, if you have any thoughts on that you could share at this time, that'd be useful.
Sure. Let me, Mr. Chairman, if I might suggest that we come back perhaps at the next board meeting with a presentation to touch on a number of these topics and kind of tie it all together.
That's fine.
On the reporting and oversight and things like that. But in general, the plan is, in fact, to have separate construction managers for each of the contracts. In part, as we go forward with the program, the different contracts have different elements to them, which may suggest different specialties being needed to look at them.
Okay.
So there is a need to tailor somewhat the skills and the expertise. We expect we'll have a different mix of firms for some of the different contracts going forward.
Right.
We're putting in place the pieces, and it's part of building the overall management team to ensure that we can oversee and have the reporting relationships, be able to understand what's coming in from our representatives as they go forward. And that's part of what, again, under Frank Baca's team, that structure he's putting in place will do. But it's something he's done at Amtrak. It's something Diana has done at Caltrans. Others of us have done. It's again, it's not an unusual process, but I would like to come back and explain to you how we will do it so you and the public can be comfortable that, in fact,
good.
We can do it appropriately.
No, I think that's good, and I think that's appropriate. Mr. Rossi.
If I have this incorrect, just disabuse me of this, but one of the questions that was raised here in public comment was the issue of the potentiality, I think, of some sort of connection between PB and...
Right, I was going to address that next, but go ahead.
And I'd like you to comment on that from the perspective of, is there an ownership? Is there any kind of ownership? Do we know if management is run by, PB guys who have bonus or who have pension plans or any of those kind of things? Could you elaborate on that?
Because it's always somewhat hard to respond to a hypothetical or an unknown. But what I can say is that, again, these are entirely separate. We'll certainly look into. I mean, I will say we'll certainly look into it. But what I can say is they are entirely separate companies. There's no connection among them, and the reporting relationship of this program construction manager will be directly to the authority and to Diana and to Frank coming in. And it was an objective review performed by the team, as indicated. But again, I'm not aware of any connection among the companies, as was suggested.
I think the more important question, which just bears 30 seconds, 1 minute to just clarify, because the issue is raised about criticisms that this board has received, certainly from the state auditor's report and from others, that the organization has been too contract-driven. And let me just offer my perspective on that, because it's very important. As we're moving into the construction phase, Mr. Morales has said, and I think very appropriately, that we are going to be a lean organization, which means that the organization itself, its management, is going to be of limited size as we move forward. My perception and perspective, not having been here through all this, is that in the early years, that the project management team, the program management team, which is technical assistance to the authority, was viewed by some as making too many decisions that, to use Mr. Hartnett's words, should have been made by the public sector. And I've heard Mr. Morales say this too. Public sector employees should be making public sector decisions, and private sector employees should be making private sector decisions. I think part and parcel of that was simply how hollowed out and thin the organization was. And that is not the case now. We have a much different management structure. We have a much different governance structure. We have, starting at the board level, I think a very active board. We have a finance and audit committee that's specifically charged with overseeing certainly the fiscal probity aspects of this and the risk management aspects of it. And we now have, thanks to Mr. Morales, not only an effective CEO, but somebody who has populated the ranks that have been unfilled for years. We have a chief engineer. We have a chief risk management officer. We have people like Ms. Gomez and her colleagues in each of the regions representing the organization, where in the past sometimes that has been done primarily through contractors. And so what we now have is an organization that I think is what would have been nice to have had in place in years past, with a CEO who's accountable to the board and a board that pays attention. And so a lot of those decisions that people feel might have needed to have come to this board, I think now are coming to this board. As we move into the construction process, it strikes me that, at least in my experience in the public sector, and Mr. Hartnett alluded to this and others, that we don't want to have, well, I worked for many years at PG&E. They had their own construction department of 3,000 people in the construction department. I think evidence has shown that that doesn't always necessarily lead to the best results. And so what is better is to have a lean organization with strong governance at the top, in this case a project construction manager who is accountable to the management of the organization. They are accountable to the board is accountable to the public. And then that organization will oversee the prime contractors. So I hope that was useful, but I wanted to try to draw a distinction between some of the concerns in the past as they relate to how we're moving forward in the future, not only with decisions on design, but also with the oversight of construction. So with that, we have an action item in front of us to select this team that has been recommended to us by Ms. Gomez and her colleagues.
I move approval of the award as recommended.
Okay, it was moved by Mr. Hartnett, seconded by Director Rossi and Vice Chair Schenk. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Vice Chair Schenk?
Yes.
Vice Chair Richards?
Yes.
Mr. Umberg?
Yes.
Mr. Hartnett?
Yes.
Mr. Rossi?
Yes.
Chairman Richard?
Yes. Okay, thank you, Ms. Gomez.
Thank you.
And we'll look forward to the follow-on discussion at the next meeting. Thank you very much, Mr. Morales. Okay, our last item on the public agenda does relate to what comes next, and that is the informational update on the RFQ for construction packages 2, 3, and 4. Mr. Vaca, you've changed your appearance since the last time you came before us.
I'm pinch hitting. Mr. Chairman, board members, thank you for giving me the opportunity to present to you the request for qualifications for the next construction packages 2, 3, and 4. I just wanted to take a moment just to remind the board, and maybe for the public's benefit, some of the differences between the contract processes that we're going through. We just approved what is technically called an engineering and architectural contract, because that's what the PCM is. And in that process, the board has a policy that requires the staff to come and seek approval for the RFQ, the request for qualifications in an A&E contract. And the reason for that is because the RFQ is the step that we use to evaluate, because the proposers come in, the teams come in, and we evaluate them, as you've seen in the presentation in the last item. Following the RFQ process in an A&E, an architectural and engineering contract, there's a recommendation to the board like was just done in the last item. When we move to a different type of contract, which is a design-build contract, which is now before you as item number 4, there's an RFQ process, but there's also an RFP process. There is no RFP process for an A&E contract. So I just wanted to make that distinction. I know you're familiar with that, but I think sometimes it's good to kind of go over that. So what we have here in item number 4 is an informational item to show you that we're going to go through an RFQ process for construction packages 2, 3, and 4. This does not require board approval. The policy of the board doesn't state that this requires approval, but we want to be open and transparent to tell you some of the next steps we're doing in the RFQ process. For the design-build contracts, it's a 2-step process. The RFQ is really a screening of those teams that have responded to the RFQ and want to participate, want to receive the request for proposal, followed by then a proposal submitted by them. And so what we have is the RFQ will be sent out by the staff, and we've just tried to highlight for you what this whole process is for construction packages 2 through 4. We would expect that the construction packages 2 through 4 would be awarded, and a notice to proceed would occur no sooner than April of 2014, for your information. And if the board has any particular questions, what I've done is I've highlighted the different sections that construction packages 2, 3, and 4 on the second page of your memo, where in the vicinity of these construction activities will take place. That is designing construction, taking it from either 15 or 30% to 100%, and then constructing the civil infrastructure up to the tracks. We do have a 5th construction package that is only for the track work, that is for the whole length of the Central Valley through construction packages 1 through 4. I've tried to include here, too, a scope of work, a description of the scope of work that construction packages 2 through 4 will have. It's quite a long list of items. And then I just want to remind the board that this really is very similar and in many ways exactly like the process that we went through for construction package 1. That is, we went out with an RFQ, we got some qualified teams, we do a real screening to make sure they are financially qualified, experience qualified, and then they're shortlisted. The last RFQ that we went through for design build, we shortlisted all 5 proposal teams because they were all qualified. We would expect for construction packages 2 through 4 that we would qualify at least 3 in that circumstance. We will be coming back to you at a later time, as we did with construction package 1, to seek your approval to release the RFP. That is required of staff. We have to go to the board to ask your permission and approval for releasing the RFP for all these construction packages. And we'll be doing so. Then following the evaluation process in the RFP for these design-build contracts, there'll be an award process. That, again, comes back to the board for your consideration and approval. and I'm happy to answer any questions. I think I've kind of laid out the process here. Happy to entertain any questions that you might have.
I will have a question, but I want to turn to my colleagues first, if anyone else has questions. I think when you come back to us, the one thing that I would be interested in is to make sure that as we look at the qualification criteria, that we're learning from whatever we need to learn from Construction Package 1. For example, and again, I don't necessarily need this to be a commentary right now, because I want people to think about it and not say things that could be misinterpreted, but are we happy with the competitive environment? Do we feel we need to make changes to relative rankings of technical versus cost or things like that? I recall that there was some considerable discussion around those issues prior to issuing the first RFP. So I guess what I'm saying is, rather than just blindly cookie cutter and replicate what we did before, I'd like to make sure that there's a feedback process where we're thinking about how satisfied we are with the process and what changes we need to make in terms of trying to get to the desired result. So I'm not even sure how that effectuates itself, but I'd like to have that conversation when this comes back. That was my only thought on this.
We have had some of those discussions internally, and if you recall, in Construction Package 1, what we came to as staff is a term sheet that showed the various highlights of the request for proposals. The board had access to the entire request for proposal that we had planned to issue. It's very voluminous. It seemed appropriate for us to summarize it in the term sheet form.
Right.
What we plan to do, and have had some internal discussions, is to take the term sheet that we had produced for Construction Package 1 and improve on that from lessons learned that we have gone through.
Yeah. And I think all I'm asking is, rather than have to find the other one and do a document compare,
yes.
To walk us through
absolutely
where you've made those recommendations for changes and why.
Sure. Happy to do that.
That's great. All right. No action taken on this item. Anything for the good of the order before we proceed to the closed session items? All right. Well, I want to thank all of you for coming today. I want to thank the staff for its work, and the board will now enter into a closed session to discuss items pertaining to litigation pursuant to the agenda, and we'll return after that with any report. Okay, we'll be back in order. At the completion of the closed session, we have no information to report. The meeting of the High Speed Rail Authority Board is now concluded. Thank you.